A very good morning to you. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the South African Morning. Thank you for staying with us, for those of you who've been with us since 6 o'clock. Now, statistics say that at least 85% of people with type 2 diabetes are overweight. Now, today is World Diabetes Day, and the Discovery Vitality Wellness team is working on a white paper outlining obesity as the main risk factor. Now, for more ways in which people can minimize their risk of diabetes through lifestyle management, we're joined this morning by Discovery Vitality's Head of Wellness, Dr Mosima Mabunda. A very good morning to you, Dr Mabunda.
Morning, Tammy. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for joining us this morning, you early riser, you. When we think of diabetes, the words that come to mind are sugar, blood sugar specifically, pancreas, insulin. But give us the definition. What exactly is diabetes? We talk about it so much, but give us the clinical definition of what diabetes really is.
Tammy, I think that's actually the perfect place to start, right? So that we have a shared understanding of what we're speaking about. So diabetes is a lifelong condition that causes a person's blood sugar levels to become too high, as you've alluded to earlier. When you have diabetes, your body either does not make enough insulin or cannot use insulin very well. Insulin, for those who might not know, is a hormone that controls the amount of sugar that is available in our bloodstream. In essence, it controls the movement of blood sugar from our blood into our body cells. Therefore, if you find yourself in a space where you don't have enough insulin, or your body cells are not responding to insulin as well as they should, this will lead to a high blood sugar level that will be detected as you test. And over time, unfortunately, this causes serious health problems. I think many of us now know someone who might have diabetes or who might have passed on because of complications of diabetes.
And what are the symptoms?
I'm glad you have asked, right? I think maybe let me start by saying there's type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes, and what we will focus on this morning is type 2 diabetes because it is the most prevalent and it's the most common, right? There are symptoms of diabetes like feeling thirsty, needing to urinate more often, feeling tired. However, I think what's important to note is because type 2 diabetes develops over time, the onset is insidious. It's not always easy for someone to sit and pick up and say, hey, I've got symptoms, like you would when you have a cold. So the best practice and my recommendation in line with the clinical guidelines is for people to screen regularly. Do not wait until you have symptoms because it starts so slow. Sometimes by the time you have symptoms, actually, it might be signaling onset of complications. So my plea and my ask and recommendation is for people to adopt regular preventative screening. And I know in our world in Vitality, we incentivize members to do that precisely because we know this.
Talk to us about the white paper that actually looks at diabetes as well as how to minimize it, and the link that has been found between obesity and diabetes.
I think it is now widely recognized that obesity is one of the key risk factors for type 2 diabetes. I mean, that link is now firmly established. Some of the statistics show that 90% of adults with type 2 diabetes are classified as overweight and obese. And when we look at our data, we also see similar statistics where if you look at those members that are registered for type 2 diabetes, most of them have obesity. So obesity has been recognized, and which is why most of the time, if you are overweight and obese, your clinician would actually recommend that you screen for diabetes. And another thing that we see in our data set is for those members whose weight is out of range, where your BMI is higher than it should be and your waist circumference is actually higher than it should be, we see that they have a higher prevalence of having high-risk blood pressure and high-risk blood glucose. So the complications of obesity are far-reaching, and specifically when it comes to diabetes, we know that excess weight is associated with it. But the positive side is we know that managing weight also reduces the risk of diabetes.
I found this quite fascinating when I was thinking about it, when you talk about the ideal weight, because that's very subjective, right? And I think at times it's also linked to cultural preferences and societal preferences. Like, for example, you know, now, mabati ufit or fresh, ugwele, umuhle, so especially among the African community, when you quite big and you're nice and round and fleshy, that's considered a healthy weight. So what is it that we're using here and is being used as the mean and the standard of what a healthy weight is? Because in some communities, what's deemed a healthy weight could be looked at as very unhealthy and quote-unquote skinny.
Very good question, Tammy. So in the clinical context, a metric that is used to ascertain whether you've got a weight that will most likely pose a health risk is BMI, body mass index. And body mass index, though it's well acknowledged that it's imperfect, it has been shown over time, there's tons of data that shows the association with higher BMIs and health risks. Hence, it's still used in clinical practice. And I'll get to the number later. But in addition, waist circumference, where you put a tape measure around your waist over your belly button, is another metric that shows if you have central adiposity that we use to measure excess weight. So in Vitality, we combine both BMI because this longitudinal data that shows the association between BMI and health risks, but we also definitely use waist circumference. So where your BMI is over 25 clinically, that is termed as being overweight. And if it's above 30, that is obesity. And your waist circumference equally for men, if it is higher than 94 centimeters, and in women, if it's higher than 80 centimeters, that is considered higher than it should be. And I think for me, the key point to emphasize is excess weight in association with health risks, not the stigma that we tend to see associated with obesity.
So basically, in summary, make sure that you eat well, that you are exercising, and that you keep healthy and fit, and that really does minimize the risks of getting diabetes. Can it be cured, or once you have it, is it a matter of just managing it for the rest of your life, or can it completely be eliminated?
So diabetes is a lifelong condition, or what is termed a chronic condition, which implies that as yet there is no cure. But having said that, diabetes can be well managed, actually. So it's not all doom and gloom. You touched on some components that I think are foundational to management of diabetes, which is lifestyle management. Things like eating healthy, exercising on most days of the week, managing your weight are critical. And depending on the risk, the severity of your diabetes, your clinician would also maybe introduce pharmacotherapy to manage your diabetes. But it is a lifelong condition. It is important to screen and detect it early because it allows you to manage it while it's still easier to manage and before onset of complications. But there are many people living normal lives with diabetes out there.
And that's a good message, I think, to leave that on. You can have diabetes and still live a very, very normal life. Thank you so much. That's Dr Mosima Mabunda. She is Discovery Vitality's head of wellness as we mark World Diabetes Day today. She says, yes, you may have it, but it can be very well managed. Eat well, take care of yourself, and keep healthy and moving, she says.